Hello, my name is Shiladitya Rakshit. Non-derogable rights is the name of the module. Learning outcomes. To give students an overview of those rights that are non-derogable on account of them being expressly stated as such in the international instruments, as well as those rights that are non-derogable on account of being peremptory norms from which no state can derogate from by way of treaty. Now, by the end of this module, students will have an understanding of those civil and political rights that are enshrined in international instruments with respect to non-derogable rights. Introduction. As explained in Module 1, the concept of non-derogation is related to the idea of core or first-generation human rights, which may not be derogated from even in an emergency. Most international human rights treaties have specific provisions setting out the scope and extent of derogation possible under the treaty. However, even those treaties set out different connotations of non-derogable rights using different formulations or rationale. For example, some rights may be non-derogable on account of being preemptory, others may be non-derogable as there may be no logical reason to derogate from them in times of emergency. This module, in continuation of Module 1, will familiarize students with practical application of the provisions on non-derogation to specific fact situations through the communications made to the Human Rights Committee. It will also look at soft law / non-binding instruments that speak of non-derogable rights. Non-derogable rights. Communications to the Human Rights Committee. The communications to the HRC offer much guidance on the practical applicability of principle of non-derogation. The condition for admissibility of communication is that the state party must have recognized the competence of the HRC to receive communications under the first optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1966. The HRC has examined the following communications: right to life and arbitrary arrest and or detention. In Eduardo Blair versus Uruguay, the HRC examined the issue of enforced disappearances along with allegation of arrest, prolonged detention and torture. In response to the family's queries, the government had only responded by stating that a warrant had been issued since August 1976, but that his whereabouts were unknown. The HRC opined that the failure of the state party to address in substance the serious allegations brought against it and corroborated by unrefuted information cannot but lead to the conclusion that Eduardo Blair is either still detained incommunicado by the Uruguayan authorities or has died while in the custody at the hands of the Uruguayan authorities. Similarly, in H. Barbate versus Uruguay, Barbato had been imprisoned for more than 8 years on the pretext of prompt security measures at the end of November 1986. Barbato was shifted to Montevideo police headquarters. Thereafter, his whereabouts were unknown till 20 December 1986, when Barbato was found dead at the military hospital from acute hemorrhage resulting from a cut of cardiac arrest. The family was told that he had committed suicide with a razor blade. The family alleged the actual reason for death was torture in custody. The HRC observed that while the committee cannot arrive at a definite conclusion as to whether Barbato committed suicide or was killed by others while in custody, yet the inescapable conclusion is that in all the circumstances the Uruguayan authorities, either by act or by omission, were responsible for not taking adequate measures to protect the life as required under Article 6.1 of the Covenant. Thus, the HRC was of the opinion that state must not deprive any person of his right to life and also must take positive steps to ensure the right to life is protected. In Moenge versus Zaire, a Zairian citizen left Zaire in 1974 and thereafter resided in Belgium as a political refugee. In absentia, he was twice sentenced to death by the Zairian courts. The committee found violations of Article 14 because Mbenge was charged, tried and convicted in circumstances in which he could not effectively enjoy the safeguards of Article 14. On the issue of violation of Article 6, the HRC expressed the view that death sentence may be imposed only in accordance with the law in force at the time of the commission of the crime and not contrary to the provisions of the Covenant. This requires that both the substantive and the procedural law in the application of which the death penalty was imposed was not contrary to the provisions of the Covenant, and also that the death penalty was imposed in accordance with that law and therefore in accordance with the provisions of the Covenant. Thus, the state party was also found in violation of Article 6, Clause 2. Torture. Through the set of communications, the HRC has evolved a very expansive meaning and scope of the term torture. In J. L. Musero versus Uruguay, Musero was made to stand hooded for hours without rest, owing to which he lost his balance and fell and suffered permanent injury to his foot. The HRC held this would constitute a violation of Article 7, even though it chose not to define the exact scope of the term torture. In De Bouton versus Uruguay, the HRC found the treatment meted out to De Bouton, that is, being forced to stand without rest, being blindfolded and cuffed continuously, constituted violation of Article 7 and 10 on the ground of degrading treatment. In E. Cuentos and M. C. Almeida versus De Quinteros versus Uruguay, the HRC held that the prolonged disappearance of a near relative constitutes psychological torture on another. It expands the victim of torture to encompass the mother whose daughter has disappeared without explanation. In Pratt and Morgan versus Jamaica, the HRC opined that excessive delays in judicial proceedings did not per se constitute cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment. However, each case had to be looked on its own merits. However, on the second issue of delay in communicating, stay on warrant of execution, the HRC opined that it constitutes cruel and inhuman treatment on account of the anguish of warrant of execution cases. Freedom of thought, conscience and religion. In Paavo Muhonen versus Finland, the HRC was asked to consider whether Article 18 contemplated the right of conscience. Objection to military service. However, the final review of the examining board, which recognized Muhonen's status as a consensuous objector, rendered the necessity to determine whether Article 18 guaranteed a right to consensuous objection to military service irrelevant. Additionally, the HRC opined that a claim for compensation would not arise as the conviction of Muhonen had been set aside on grounds of equity as opposed to miscarriage of justice. In Bhinder versus Canada, requirement of wearing a hard hat with interfered with a sick man's ability to wear turban was held not violative of Article 18 as restriction was not rowing from a discriminatory ground, rather was imposed for observance of reasonable safety standards, given the occupation was that of electrician at a railroad company. Measures imposed in view of reasonable and objective standards of safety do not stand in the way of Article 18. Non-derogable rights in non-binding instruments. Besides Article 4 Clause 2 of the ICCPR and the provisions in various regional instruments, non-derogable rights can be found enumerated in several non-binding instruments. The categorization of the right in these instruments proceeds for mainly three classification: value-oriented identification, that is, the more important the right, the higher the need to protect non-derogable rights are thus intrinsically valuable. B. Function-oriented identification, that is, the role they play in emergencies. And C. Consent-oriented identification, that is, as long as they exist in a treaty, they are subject to the state. We will set out below are some non-binding instruments, policies and documents that follow one or more of these approaches to categorization. The Siracusa Principles. The United Nations Economic and Social Council Siracusa Principles on the Limitation and Derogation Provisions in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights 1985 reiterates that no state party shall, even in times of emergency threatening the life of the nation, derogate from the covenant. Guarantees under Article 4 Clause 2 these rights are non-derogable under any condition, even for the asserted purpose of preserving the life of the nation. State parties to the covenant, as part of their obligation to ensure the enjoyment of these rights to all persons within their jurisdiction under Article 2 Clause 1, and to adopt the measures to secure an effective remedy for violations under Article 2 Clause 3, shall take special precautions in times of public emergency to ensure that neither official nor semi-official groups engaged in a practice of arbitrary and extrajudicial killings or involuntary disappearances. That person in detention are protected against torture and other forms of cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. That no persons are convicted or punished under laws or decree with retroactive effect. The ordinary courts shall maintain their jurisdiction even in a time of public emergency to adjudicate any complaint that a non-derogable right has been violated. In addition to reiterating the specifically insisted non-derogable rights of the ICCPR, such as right to life, prohibition of torture, right not to be held in slavery, etc., and stating that they will apply to non-signatories as well, being customary law, the Siracusa Principle states that although protections against arbitrary arrest and detention, Article 9, and the right to a fair and public hearing in determination of a criminal charge, Article 14, may be subject to legitimate limitations if strictly required by the exigencies of an emergency situation. The denial of certain rights fundamental to human dignity can never be strictly necessary in any conceivable emergency. Respect for these fundamental rights is essential in order to ensure enjoyment of non-derogable rights and to provide an effective remedy against their violation in particular. A. All arrests and detention and the place of detention shall be recorded, if possible, centrally and make available to the public without delay. B. No person shall be detained for an indefinite period of time, whether detained pending judicial investigation or trial or detained without charge. And C. No person shall be held in isolation without communication with his family, friend or lawyer for longer than a few days. D. Where persons are detained without charge, the need of their continued detention shall be considered periodically by an independent review tribunal. E. Any person charged with an offence shall be entitled to a fair trial by a competent, independent, and impartial court established by law. Civilians shall normally be tried by the ordinary courts. Any person charged with a criminal offence shall be entitled to the presumption of innocence and to at least the following rights to ensure a fair trial. Right to a fair trial should include the right to inform the charges promptly, right against self-incrimination, presumption of innocence, free legal assistance, right to be present at the trial, right to examine witnesses, right against double jeopardy, etc. An adequate record of the proceedings shall be kept in all cases, and no person shall be tried for punished again for an offence for which he has already been convicted or acquitted. It further reiterates that in a non-international armed conflict, state parties to Geneva Conventions shall have to abide by Common Article 3. The safeguards under the 1977 Additional Protocol, it will apply to state party to that protocol. The Siracusa Principles also references the ILO Basic Human Rights Conventions, which contain a number of rights dealing with such matters as forced labour, freedom of association, equality in employment and trade union, and workers' rights which are not subject to derogation during an emergency. Paris Minimum Standards. The Paris Minimum Standards of Human Rights Norms in a state of emergency were finalized in the 61st Conference of the International Law Association. Held at Paris, it is meant to serve as a guidance document for governments and non-government organizations as a benchmark for the minimum guarantees to be afforded in times of emergency. In addition, it calls upon states in a state of emergency to not suspend access to judicial review and other procedural safeguards. The Paris Standards advance are 16 articles that guarantee rights that shall not be suspended or derogated from in times of emergency. They include, amongst others, A. Article 1, right to legal personality, that is, right to be recognized as a person before the law and the inherent right to dignity and integrity. B. Article 2, freedom from slavery and servitude. C. Article 3, equality before the law and non-discrimination, the grounds of race, color, sex, language, religion, nationality, or social origin. Article 4, inherent right to life of every person, accountability of states for every enforced or involuntary disappearance of an individual within its jurisdiction occasioned by an act or omission of the state. Article 5, non-deprivation of a right to liberty and security of the person except on such grounds and in accordance with such procedures as are established by law. Article 6, freedom from torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. In particular, no one shall be subjected without his free consent to medical or scientific experimentation. Article 7 is right to a fair trial with minimum guarantees without discrimination, including right to be informed of charges against him, right to prepare one's defense, the right to be present at one's trial, presumption of innocence, principle of non-retroactivity, double jeopardy, right against self-incrimination, appeal, right to be tried by an independent and impartial court or tribunal. Article 8, freedom of thought, conscience and religion. Article 16, right to a remedy, that is, institution of an independent and impartial judiciary for ensuring rule of law. All ordinary remedies as well as special ones such as habeas corpus or amparo shall remain operative during the period of emergency with a view to affording protection to the individual with respect to his rights and freedoms which are or could not be affected during the emergency, as well as other rights and freedoms which may have been attempted by emergency measures. Civil courts shall have and retain jurisdiction over all trials of civilians. International humanitarian law. In addition to human rights, instruments the non-derogable provision of which continue to apply in times of armed conflict, the Common Article 3 of the Geneva Convention of 1949 also sets out a common minimum standard of protection that need to be observed. Thus, civilians not participating in hostilities and persons hors de combat shall be entitled to humane treatment without any adverse distinction founded on race, color, religion or faith, sex, birth or wealth, or any other similar criteria. Violence to person, taking of hostages, outrages upon personal dignity, in particular humiliating and degrading treatment, passing of sentences, and the carrying out of executions without previous judgment pronounced by a regulatory constituted court, affording all the judicial guarantees which are recognized as indispensable by civilized peoples. Lack of care for the wounded and sick are all prohibited under the article. Summary: non-derogable rights attempt to strike a fine balance between individual freedoms and the state's interest in restoring public order or responding to situations of emergency. They are intended to guard against suppression of inalienable freedoms during authoritarian regimes on the ground of existing political unrest. Especially vulnerable in such situations are political, religious, and racial minorities, against whom a hostile majority imposes harsh sanctions ostensibly for protection of national security. Together, the two modules set out the historical context of non-derogation. They also set out the subsequent developments such as incorporation of non-derogation in regional instruments and interpretive documents. It also identifies the attempts made to reinforce and expand non-derogable rights through codification of customary law as well as the interpretation of the HRC in the general comments. Thank you.